Hey, spiritual gumbo time. And this is laws, injunctions, ordinances. Obviously, we've been talking about them. Um, I can't stress enough to you that when people say the Ten Commandments, like, those aren't even the first commandments that Moses was given to give to the people. I'm pretty sure the first command that he was given to give to the people, I told the people that that was the first commandment. I'm not going to go back and look for it in the Exodus. Um, People are shallow. I understand that. The teachers that taught us virtually everything we know, with the exception of them being virtuous for what they cared about, they were shallow. So we must be fair to the idea that we were never shown or never taught to think anything other than what they told us to think. And for some people, that's not an issue, but for me, it is because I know for a fact that when I read these things to you, you must apply them to not just everyday life, but to just common sense and as to what things you believe the people were already doing and what things the Most High God knew that the nations were up to that he did not want the people to engage in, right? So certain laws on the books are for preventive measures. It's not because anybody's ever done it. It's because if this ever happens, this is how we have to go about this. It's basic sense. I know it's not basic to everyone, but it really is basic. Now, we're going to pick up in verse 1 of chapter 23 of the Exodus. And we read this as we left off. And it says, "Thou shalt not receive a vain report. Thou shalt not agree with the unjust man to become an unjust witness. Thou shalt not associate with the multitude for evil. Thou shalt not join thyself with the multitude to turn aside with the majority so as to shut out judgment." Stop right there. So, there's quite a few, all of them are very important, but the one that really should get you is the "thou shalt not associate with the multitude for evil." You see, because it's telling us that if you associate with them for evil, all the things that take place afterwards, right? Like you joining yourself with the majority to shut out judgment. That's the only way it can happen is if you, because they're shutting out judgment is evil, right? It also says that you're not going to pretty much, you don't take in a BS report. It's vanity. Like a, a man says, once again, someone stole something or broke something to the degree that we don't actually know or to the degree that we can't see it, right? No, you don't just do that, and then you don't become an unjust witness for a man saying something like that. You could do all these things in one. Join the multitude for evil and shut out judgment. Come on, you could do all those things in one hit, and it's telling you don't do those things. People do it all the time. A really good one. Just in case y'all don't ever think that this happened, when white folk were tearing this country up 100 years ago, trying to kill all the black people in it, you do know that there were white people who were brave enough or dumb enough, depending on how you look at it, to say something for black folk, and a lot of them it cost them their lives going forward. So when you don't join the multitude for evil, bad things can happen to you, but at least you did the right thing. Verse 3. "And thou shalt not spare a poor man in judgment. And if thou meet thine enemy's ox or ass going astray, thou shalt turn them back and restore them to him." So you hear that right there? So not only do you not spare a poor person during his judgment, but he's talking about, look at the two different mediums. The poor man could be your enemy, but let's just say he's not, right? He's like, you don't get to spare them because they're poor. Like, oh man, I totally understand why they did it. They ought not have done that. Whatever the judgment is for them, whether it be theft or let's say he's taken somebody's daughter, deceived their daughter, and betrothed it, and taking a daughter right on, and he doesn't have the money to pay the dowry, things like that. You're not going to spare him. Okay? And then also having said that, it's saying that your enemy, if his ox has, or his ass has gone out away the way, you don't keep their donkey and their ass. You make sure that it gets back to them. Verse 5. And if thou see thine enemy's ass fallen under its burden, thou shalt not pass it by, but shall help to raise it up with him. So understand that these people that are your enemies are clearly people that you would be around every day. So I could assume that the enemies are people that are of your nation who you just don't agree with, are people who are strangers and sojourners, okay? Or just the original inhabitants of the land. However you want to put it, your enemy. And they live close enough to you that if you see an instance where their ass, right on, clearly there's way too much weight on this donkey, and it's falling over, right? You're supposed to help them. You're supposed to help them out. And this is how people become not enemies anymore. Is it saying that there? No. Is it saying that, oh, you doing that one time is going to totally, you know what I'm saying, build a new house for y'all? No. But these are things that if you practice them, maybe they're not your enemy anymore. Just throwing that out there. Verse 6. Thou shalt not rest the sentence of the poor in his judgment. So you're not going to take away the sentence. Thou shalt abstain from every unjust thing. Thou shalt not slay the innocent and just. And thou shalt not justify the wicked for gifts. And thou shalt not receive gifts, for gifts blind the eye of seeing and corrupt just words. Stop right there. Do you see that? You see how it goes into a dialogue of what's just, right on, or what's not, or what is unjust, or pretty much we know what's just by it telling us what's unjust. You know what I'm saying? The unjust things are slaying the innocent and the just, taking gifts to justify the wicked, right on, pretty much allowing gifts to corrupt words that would otherwise be righteous. Right. This is a bribe. Now, do you see why it's so bad what Jotham did? How his influence over Moses could have potentially brought down the nation before it even was actually even a nation of people? That's an amazing thing to think about, isn't it? When you actually hear the fullness of the story. And I know people aren't patient enough to deal with me to wait for me to do it on my terms, but that's okay. I always encourage y'all to go ahead and read forward and put together the idea in your own mind as to what it is that you believe is going on. But I'm telling you also what I know to be true because I've done enough research and I've put the time in. I cannot stress that enough. The same way that you respect all these other people for putting in the time, I've put in the time. Having said that, you don't take anything from people. And this is why it's so hard to believe politicians, because they take gifts all the time. Right. Verse 9. And ye shall not afflict a stranger, for ye know the heart of a stranger. For ye yourselves were strangers in the land of Egypt. 6 years shalt thou sow thy land, and gather in the fruits of it. But in the 7th year thou shalt let it rest, and leave it, and the poor of thy nation shall feed, and the wild beasts of the field shall eat that which remains. Stop right there. So this is an indication that there were clearly storehouses and ways that people kept their food, their grain, whatever you want to call it, right? Whether you know they cured things, or they used the smoking process, or just naturally dried it, sun dried it. I don't know. I wasn't there. Ground it and then, let it go through that process of drying out and then held it. I don't know. But I do know that they were threshing wheat. Having said that, it's saying for 6 years, get your stuff together. In the 7th year, you're to let the people that are poor to take all of that. And then what they don't take, you're supposed to let the animals eat the remains. Now, why this is so important is because let's assume that a man is poor, right? And he's diligent and he works. And every seventh year, let's say for 25, 26 years, so he's had 4 years, he's had 3 times to do this, almost a fourth time to do this. Now he's doing a lot better in his life, right? Maybe because he comes from a line of men that were poor and they understand how to work hard, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe he comes from a line of rich people who became poor. He's trying to get back. I don't know. But I do understand that this is a way to rebuild your wealth if you've lost it. And this is also a way to pay homage to those who are more than likely doing the work for you. Come on, let's just keep it 1,000. Who are not your servants. Okay? Who have not made themselves an indentured servant of yours. Because maybe they have more. A person could have more than one skill that could be applied, where in which there's no need to make them a long-term servant to anyone, because my skills mean that I'm going to get paid no matter where I go. Like a smith, like a blacksmith or something like that. They're always going to have work. It doesn't matter. Going forth. And then it says, just to keep in mind, you don't afflict the stranger. Now, if people ever wanted to know why black people have always treated other races of people with so much dignity and so much respect, it's because for thousands of years your ancestors practiced this. Even though they didn't practice it in fullness, they did practice it. So it's no surprise that all the other races of people do what? Look to you to treat them with righteousness, because you're the only group of people who've ever had a known ordinance as to treating someone who is not you like an equal and treating them righteously. Come on. Who else? Tell me who else. The Egyptians said that the Hebrews were abominations. And now the Most High God is saying that even if there's Egyptians with you, you don't treat them like that. Because there was Egyptians who treated y'all right, and there was Egyptians who treated y'all wrong. Verse 12. No, in the finishing verse 11. Thus shalt thou do to thy vineyard and to thine olive yard. And it's talking about how every 7 years, or 6 years you gather, the 7th year you leave it out. 6 days shalt thou do thy works, and on the 7th day there shall be rest, that thine ox and thine ass may rest, and that the son of thy maidservant and the stranger may be refreshed. Observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And ye shall make no mention of the name of other gods, neither shall they be heard out of your mouth. Now, I'm not sure if y'all know this, but the actual training regiment for the military is based on the 6 days of work and the 1 day of rest. Like when you go to boot camp or basic training, even in the military, you work for 6 days, you rest for 7. You know what I'm saying? Even when people deploy, they do their best. They don't always get to maintain that, but they do their best to maintain that. Unless you're out there in the field, of course. Just something to throw out there. Verse 13. So it's rest. The Sabbath is a holy day. Observe all the things whatsoever I have commanded you. All the things I have commanded you. And ye shall make no mention of the name of other gods, neither shall they be heard out of your mouth. So look, he said, remember everything else, and then also remember this too. Don't be talking about other gods. Don't even bring them up. Don't let them be heard coming out your mouth. Pretty much give them no life. Right on? You know what I'm saying? Give them no life at all. They're not even a thought process. Verse 14. Keep ye a feast to me 3 times in the year. Take heed to keep a feast of unleavened bread. That's the Passover. 7 days ye shall eat unleavened bread, as I charged thee at the season of the month of new corn, which is the first month of the year. For in it thou camest out of Egypt. Thou shalt not appear before me empty. So you're not gonna. So he's saying, when it's all said and done, you don't sacrifice. You don't come to me empty-handed. Okay, that's not what you do. Verse 16. And thou shalt keep the harvest, shall keep the feast of the harvest of first fruits of thy labors, whatsoever thou shalt have sown in thine field, and the feast of completion at the end of the year. So those are the three feasts: the unleavened bread, the feast of the first fruits, and then the feast of completion at the end of the year. Those are the three feasts. And the feast of completion at the end of the year, and the gathering of thy fruits of the field. 3 times in the year shall all the males appear before the Lord thy God. Now I want y'all to listen to this. If the people were perfect, did you know that we would have only ever been eating meat 3 times a year? Are you listening to that? Follow me. If there's nobody sinning, right? You're not doing any sacrifice then, outside of the reasons that you would sacrifice, which are for these 3 things. So the people weren't even supposed to eat meat like that. Come on. It's supposed to be a rare delicacy and something that you truly appreciated. And once again, obedience is better than sacrifice, but it also speaks to you value the life of the animal as well. I value the life of an ox. I value the life of a lamb. I value the life of a goat. The lives mean something to me. They don't just mean nothing. It's not just an animal that I can consume because it's not consuming me. That's wild nonsense. The abundance of the eating of meats because the abundance of sin, which is sustained through sacrifice. Before I empty this out and turn it off, because I have to do this 2 parts, let me just read this last part to y'all and I'll remember where I'm at for later. Take heed, verse 15, to keep the feast of unleavened bread. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread, as I charged thee at the season of the month of new corn. For in it thou camest out of Egypt. Thou shalt not appear before me empty. Thou shalt keep the harvest of the first fruits of thy labors, whatsoever thou shalt have sown in thy field, and the feast of completion at the end of the year, and the gathering of thy fruits out of thy field. 3 times in the year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God. For when I shall have cast out the nations from before thee, and shall have widened thy borders, thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, neither must the fat of my feast abide till the morning. So the Most High God is saying 2 things. You don't sacrifice, so you don't eat the sacrifice with leavened bread. Whenever you sacrifice to me, you don't ever sacrifice with leavened bread. That's number 1. Number 2, okay, you cook off all of it. You don't leave anything remaining. So you don't waste anything, but you cook off the fat of my sacrifice. Come on. The fat of the offering. Where we going to leave at? We'll leave that right there. And I'll be back later. Then I'll do part 2. Catch y'all in a second.